Bukele has turned El Salvador safe because he locked up all the criminals. He locked up 40,000 criminals and put them in prisons, and El Salvador is now safer than America. El Salvador was the murder capital of the world, and now El Salvador is much safer than America. I think it's wrong if you guys are afraid to walk the streets of Denver at night. I wouldn't walk the streets of Denver at night, would you guys?
No. The Great Society from Lyndon Johnson. It was a series of policies that were designed to help underprivileged communities.
Right.
They hurt the very people they were supposed to help.
How?
Well, the reality is it created dependence on government. So you have a lot of single mothers, for example, that are paid more money not to have a man in the house than to have a man in the house because of the way the math of these aid programs
What do you
work.
mean?
Well, often the way the math of the aid is calculated is if you have an earning husband in the household, that actually causes you to disqualify for forms of federal aid that were designed to help you.
Right.
But actually, the best way to get kids in your own household ahead is in a two-parent household, because if you're raised in a two-parent household, you're less likely to end up in jail, less likely to end up in poverty, more likely to graduate from high school. So one of the ways that, if you're asking for advice, I would say for the people around you, even who might lean left, you can recognize their intentions come from a good place.
Absolutely.
But the policies of their leaders have actually betrayed the very people they were supposed to help. And you can let them know, because I believe this is genuinely true. Not just the Republican Party, but our conservative movement.
So values are the #1 predictor of entering the middle class. And there's a great book called Life at the Bottom. You should read it, by Theodore Dalrymple, who's a social worker in the United Kingdom. It's called Life at the Bottom, where he got into social work because he wanted to help people, and he realized it was not a lack of stuff. It wasn't lack of housing, lack of food stamps. It was that their value system was one that kept them poor. So yeah, really quick, then I want to get to the next question.
I'm just struggling because in all of my social work classes right now, they're talking about all of those things. And
they're wrong.
So what do I do? I'm trying to learn about what I want to do.
I think you need to stay in social work because you're called to do it, but there's an amazing amount of literature from Thomas Sowell to Shelby Steele to Theodore Dalrymple that get down to actual root causes of poverty, which is not lack of stuff, but is worldview. And I think that'd be super helpful.
There is obviously a huge issue in the country with healthcare prices.
Yeah.
What do you think is the best way to lower costs for families?
The hospitals are gouging prices significantly. We have to try to get at the root cause, which is the food that we are feeding ourselves and our kids. We have to get to the fact that we are an increasingly sedentary country. We aren't walking enough. We're not exercising enough. And healthcare costs are exploding because we don't actually address the root cause 20 or 30 years prior.
How do we take on those huge food companies?
Well, the first thing is we should have a real conversation about banning pesticides in when we're making our food. Ultra-processed food. Ultra-processed food should not be on the FDA recommended food pyramid. We have a chronic disease epidemic. It's not because our kids are lazier. It's because we are actively poisoning our kids with food from big ag that we're spraying with all these pesticides, these chemicals. And if you look at the ingredient list of just a Lunchables box, we are basically giving kids the worst thing possible for their metabolism, for their endocrinology. So that I'm more interested in the healthcare conversation that tries to make sure that a 12-year-old doesn't have to get on Ozempic by the time they're 18 years old. And just so you know, they're giving pediatric Ozempic now for 12 and 13-year-olds. They are now treating obesity as a genetic disorder that you cannot do anything about, and they just want a 12-year-old to now have to take a shot every week to try to curb their obesity, which has all other sorts of very, very negative health implications.